The red heifer ash is foundational under the law. The Jews now have 4 qualified red heifers. The Jews are weeks away from completing their 10th ever red heifer offering. Jewish tradition also connects the sacrificing of the 10th red heifer with the coming of Messiah. We know from Scripture the Jews must first build another temple before Christ can return. Only now can the Jews build their temple. They haven't had qualified red heifers. They haven't owned Olivet land. They haven't had undefiled, clean Levites to perform the red heifer offering until right now. They haven't had red heifer ash to purify the temple for the recommencement of sacrifices. Christians, read the signs of the times. Wake up, look up. The day of our redemption and translation draws near. Most people in the world have little clue about the biblical significance of a pure red heifer. Most Christians are clueless as to how critical the red heifer is for end times prophecy to play out. Most Jews have no idea how important the red heifer is for Judaism. Until about a week ago, I wasn't aware just how critical the red heifer was for end times prophecy. Those who know their Bible well understand the Christ-denying Jews in Israel at the moment must build another temple for Antichrist to defile. But another temple cannot be built until a burnt offering with a pure red heifer has occurred. The Hamas terrorists who invaded and attacked Israel on the 7th of October understand how important the red heifer is. In late January 2024, a Hamas spokesman announced, "The aggression against our path reached its peak with the bringing of red cows." In simple terms, Israel's access to pure red heifers was a strong motive for their terrorist attack. So Muslim terrorists are more spiritually aware of the times and seasons than most Christians and Jews, although their perspective is from the opposing demonic side. Satan surely knows his time of imprisonment is growing near. So let's unpack the red heifer and its significance for us. This is spine-tingling information. Let's turn to the Bible for foundational teaching on red heifers and their role in purification. We need to travel back in time approximately 3,500 years ago, shortly after Israel's exodus from Egypt. We pick up the narrative in Numbers chapter 19. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord has commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer, without blemish, in which there is no defect, and on which a yoke has never come. You shall give it to Eleazar the priest, that he may take it outside the camp, and it shall be slaughtered before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, and sprinkle some of its blood 7 times directly in front of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the heifer shall be burned in his sight. Its hide, its flesh, its blood, and its offal shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, and cast them into the midst of the fire, burning the heifer." Skip to verse 9. "Then a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and store them outside the camp, in a clean place. And they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel, for the water of purification. It is for purifying from sin. And the one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening." Skip to verse 17. "And for an unclean person, they shall take some of the ashes of the heifer, burnt for purification from sin, and running water shall be put on them in a vessel. A clean person shall take hyssop, and dip it in the water, sprinkle it on the tent, and on all the vessels, on the persons who are there, or on the one who touched a bone, the slain, the dead, or a grave. The clean person shall sprinkle the unclean on the third day and on the seventh day. And on the seventh day he shall purify himself, wash his clothes and bathe in water. And at evening he shall be clean. Skip to verse 21. It shall be a perpetual statute for them. The Mosaic law had many different types of sacrifices and offerings, but these red heifer burnt offerings, for purification purposes, were a very unique and exclusive offering. Countless millions of animals were sacrificed over the centuries at the tabernacle and at the temple. But only 9 red heifers in all of history have ever been burned in alignment with the Numbers 19 instructions. You see, the ashes from each of these rare red heifer offerings were mixed with water from a flowing source. And this ash and water mixture lasted many decades, even well over a century. From the Exodus in approximately 1495 BC till the AD 70 destruction of the temple, only 9 red heifers were killed for the purification of all Israel. That's well over 1500 years. The ashes from each individual red heifer allowed for hundreds of millions of sprinkling purifications. The purifying sprinkling was also required to purify the tabernacle before offering in it would be acceptable to the Lord. Before the 3 temples built by Solomon, Zerubbabel and Herod could be declared pure for sacrifice, this red heifer ash and water mixture was required. No red heifer ash, and the Jews could not be clean and could not sacrifice. They couldn't even enter the temple without this purification. The red heifer ash is foundational under the law. Since 1996, rabbis have been searching for a pure red heifer. The Numbers 19 instructions are fairly simple, but Rabbinic Judaism has added multiple layers of complexity to the qualifications for a suitable red heifer. After 28 long years of diligently searching the world, the Jews now have 4 qualified red heifers. They had 5 last year, but one has subsequently been disqualified after inspection by multiple rabbis with the strictest legalistic rigour. This is stunning. This is historic. This is of great prophetic significance. For the first time in approximately 2,000 years, the Jews have 4 pure, undefiled red heifers, all now of a qualified age. And they only need one. Every indication suggests the religious Jews intend to pick one of these 4 unique red heifers and complete this burnt offering sometime this year, sometime in 2024. They'll then have the ashes to build and purify the temple, purify their priests, and purify the people. This is why Hamas attacked on the 7th of October. They know the Jews are ceremonially now almost ready to commence building a new temple. The Jews have completed a practice trial run in preparation for this impending Levitical Numbers 19 red heifer burnt offering. They wanted to know how long the process would take, how much wood was required to completely consume the heifer, and how much ash the offering would produce. Believe it or not, they estimated that a staggering 660 billion, that's billion with a B, 660 billion purifying, cleansing individual sprinklings would be produced from just one red heifer sacrifice. The ash from the red heifer, from the cedar wood, from the hyssop, from the scarlet offering, mixed with flowing water from the Gihon spring, would provide decades worth of purifying sprinklings. The Jews are weeks away from completing their 10th ever red heifer offering, the 10th in their entire 3,500 year history. Jewish tradition also fascinatingly connects the sacrificing of the 10th red heifer with the coming of Messiah. They don't realise the Messiah has already come and given his life for the purification and justification of all who trust in him. He died on a wooden cross outside the camp. They used a hyssop branch to offer him sour wine as he hung dying. After he died, they pierced his side, and his precious scarlet blood mixed with water flowed out. So Christ's purifying sacrifice outside Jerusalem, outside the camp, involved wood, hyssop, scarlet, and flowing water, prefigured by this red heifer offering. Of course, the Jews need pure, undefiled priests to perform this sacrifice. But since there's been no red heifer ash for nearly 2,000 years to purify the Levites, an observant person might ask, where will the Jews find these pure, undefiled priests? According to Scripture, a person becomes defiled, unclean, if they touch or come into close contact with a dead body. But, applying a strict rabbinic mindset, they extend this defilement to the nth degree. They say the only ground you can walk on to ensure you remain undefiled is bedrock. If you walk on any other ground that isn't bedrock, it's possible you may have walked over the remains of a long dead person. The only way to know for sure you haven't come into contact with the ashes of a dead person is to either only ever walk on bedrock or otherwise keep your feet totally off the earth. Walk and live on man-made elevated structures. The religious Jews take these things very seriously. Today, the Jews have a group of young Levites who've never touched the earth. They've never touched the ocean. They've been fully trained in all the ways of Aaron. They're undefiled by death. They're Levitically clean. They're in strict compliance with both the law and rabbinic tradition. They don't need the red heifer ashes to be purified. Numbers 19 says, the red heifer offering must be made outside the camp. The rabbis have added to this by saying the offering must be made on the Mount of Olives, both opposite and in full view of the Temple Mount. So a group of religious Jews have purchased 2 plots of land on the Mount of Olives for the express purpose of making this red heifer offering. In the days of the temple, a man-made causeway bridge spanned the Kidron Valley. The few red heifer offerings made during the temple era were offered on the Mount of Olives, and the ashes transported on the bridge above the defiling ground of the Kidron Valley over to the temple. The Levites took their purification and defilement very seriously, and today they're just as deadly serious and fastidious with these things. You probably have noticed the Arabs have placed a graveyard between the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount to defile this location for Jews. But as long as the pure Levites don't touch the earth, they remain clean. The Arab cemetery is no hindrance to the Levitical pure priests. We know from Scripture the Jews must first build another temple before Christ can return. As the Scriptures tell, Antichrist will sit in the temple 3.5 years before the second coming. He'll then claim to be God and demand all the world worship him under penalty of head-chopping death for non-compliance. Only now can the Jews build their temple. For centuries, building the temple has not been possible. They desired it, but it wasn't possible. They haven't had qualified red heifers until right now. They haven't owned Olivet land opposite the Temple Mount until right now. They haven't had undefiled, clean Levites that have never touched the earth to perform the red heifer offering until right now. They haven't had red heifer ash to purify the temple for the recommencement of sacrifices. Keep your eyes open and your ears peeled for this event. The Jews won't announce in advance they're doing this, as the Arabs would enter into full jihad mode if they did. We'll only hear about it, if we hear about it at all, after it's been completed, the ash collected and safely removed by the young, undefiled Levites. This is genuinely exciting stuff. Just another sign the day of the Lord is at hand. People, the temple is coming. The day of the Lord is at hand, and Jesus is coming back. Christians, read the signs of the times. Wake up, look up. The day of our redemption and translation draws near. Until our next study, may God richly bless you all.